Hi, Chapter 20, Part 2. Change the hat. He felt ashamed to be human, and he felt ashamed of his own body. He hated it, small, weak, useless. He hoped no one was looking at him. So that's the ass I've been kicking all this time, whispered Bixer in his ear. Not bad. And he couldn't help it a little. A little smile crept up on his face. But it only lasted a moment, because the Shadow Guards were making them surrender everything, even Mystica's big golden rings. Bixer had hidden a needle somewhere deep in her hair, but she didn't lose those, but everything else was taken away. The horns, the Shadow Guard said. The males, take down your hair. The captain bristled. But these horns are part of our faith. We wear them to remind us of the stars. You can forget about the stars, said the Shadow Guard. Take them down. Mystica came up behind Lucky and tended to his horns. He felt the threads unravelling, the braids being undone, the velvet coming off. He saw it happen to the Professor, the Captain Frolix, all of them, stripped of their majestic horns they were so proud of, until their hair hung long and loose and lank. Frolix looked so much smaller without them. He seemed to shrink before the Shadow Guards, as he had on Leo 5. Professor Basantine's head had hung low since they'd taken Bazooka. He'd stood not ramrod straight, as normal, but hunched and stooped, even his whiskers drooping. Only Captain Knox was unbowed, standing up to his full height, exuding an authority that even the Shadow Guards couldn't quell, as if he had faced things far worse than Shadow Guards in his time. But Lucky could not imagine anything worse. He felt totally helpless and naked, and the only disguise he had left now was a flimsy pair of contact lenses. Enter the inspection chamber, a Shadow Guard commanded. The old ones first. Walk through the double doors. Captain Knox, Mystica and the Professor went forward together. They walked arm in arm through the double doors, which closed behind them with a silent swish. What happens in there? Said Frolix, shivering. Full body inspection, said the Shadow Guard. They waited. 1 minute past 2, then the word clear came up on the door. You two, the Shadow Guard told Frolix and Bixer. Your turn now, go in. They went through together, leaving Lucky alone. Why can't I go with them? He wondered. Why do they leave me on my own till the end? Maybe because they know I'm a faked actor and just waiting. No, don't think that. Think about all the hours you spent with the Professor, practicing for this moment. Think about Bixer. Think about everything except the panic that's clawing at your chest. But still it was rising, simmering, smouldering inside him. He could taste sulphur at the back of his throat, just waiting to flare up, to shine and burn and give him away. Your turn now, called the Shadow Guard at last. Lucky fought down the fear and walked through the double doors. They closed behind him, sealing him into a shallow chamber, alone. Then tiny metal probes filled the chamber, probes like spiders and needle-sharp legs. Before he could move, they swarmed all over him, spider legs clicking as they scurried across his skin. It was vile, but he couldn't stop it. He had to endure somehow. Keep walking, said a voice, with your hands in the air. He put his hands up and walked forward. His skin was crawling with spiders all over, front and back, up and down. Spiders' legs scuttling across his face, his nose, his eyes. The taste of sulphur was in his mouth now. He was just a moment from flaring into flame. No, think of Bixer, only Bixer. And hold on, hold on, hold on. And then suddenly the spiders were gone. The doors opened before him, and he staggered out the other side. The Sunfire crew were all there, and they were shivering but unharmed. They were retrieving their clothes from the conveyor belt, putting on their hooves, braiding their hair into horns before a full-length mirror on the wall. Lucky joined them, gasping. Have I really done it? He thought. Nothing bad happened. I kept the power down. I didn't burn. I've done it. We're going to get away with it. We're going to go through the wall. Relief coursed through his body, cool and sweet. He started to dress, smiling secretly to himself. But then he noticed Bixer staring at him with undisguised horror. She was motioning frantically at his eyes. He glanced into the mirror. His reflection looked back at him, completely normal. What was she trying to tell him? And then he understood. Normal. His eyes looked normal. The probe had taken his contact lenses, and now his human eyes were exposed. No, he reached for his mirror shades, hoping against hope to get there in time. But one of the Shadow Guards was already stalking up to him. A probe was in his hands, the telltale contact lenses in his grip. Fake lenses? A human disguised as an alien? The other Shadow Guards all turned to stare at Lucky, scan his brain. Bixer bristled. Frolix's massive fists clenched. Captain Knox took a step forward, towering over them all. The boy is with us, he said. He's our apprentice. We will answer for him, and... Then suddenly every cannon in the room was pointing at Knox's head. Ozymandias, said Mystica quietly, you can do nothing at this moment in time. The present belongs to them. Only the future remains open. She was right. This little crew of Axo was totally surrounded. They were powerless to help. Slowly the captain held up his hands and backed away. One of the Shadow Guards reached out to Lucky's face, Fingers of darkness came towards him, towards his eyes, his pupils. "No, please!" begged Lucky. "Hold still," commanded the Shadow Guard. He leaned forward. The fingers of darkness filled Lucky's vision, touching the surface of his eyeball. He couldn't bear to have his darkness enter his eyes, to watch as it came inside his head. "No, wait! No! No!" He jerked his head back. "Move one more time," said the Shadow Guard, "and we will kill you." Lucky stood there, helpless, and let it happen. There was no choice. He tried not to watch the fingers reaching for his eyes, and focused instead on his friends in the background. He could see them shaking in fear as the dark shadows touched the surface of his eye. He felt it entering his eyeball, felt huge pressure reaching back through his optic nerve towards the brain, reaching right into his brain. He saw the sparkle as bright images were ripped out of his brain, as thoughts and dreams and feelings were pulled from a place deep inside him, streaming up into the darkness. And his fingertips started to shine as his self-control finally broke. His hands began to glow as all hopes of escape slipped away. He screamed in horror and slumped to the ground, unconscious. Roman 5. The wolf is breaking through. The Astraeus of union cannot bind it, for it severs every bond.